And after all this time, you would think, they should be friends again, but
Yeah, some
but
wounds never heal though, do they?
it is true. But I'm happy to say that most of them have, I think. But it's what's sad to me now is that a lot of these people who are they're reaching the age now where physically
Mm,
they're not in very good shape, a
yeah,
lot of them.
yeah,
And I hear more and more every year people passing away and stuff like
hmm,
that. And some of them never even had chance to tell their stories, which I find,
yeah. Well, hopefully, seeing as your site is still there,
yeah,
somebody will come along in the future and have stories about people that maybe you don't have now, so you can add them in.
yeah, that's true as well. And I understand, like some people might maybe just don't want to talk about it as well,
Yeah.
and I'll protect their
Hmm.
privacy as well. If people tell me stuff, they say, "Well, this is what happened," but don't tell anyone, then I'll respect that as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
will just put it out there, and I do respect people's privacy as far as that kind of
yeah.
stuff.
So what is your plan for the future for your website? Are you just going to keep on trucking with it, or
Well,
what
I
do
don't
you
think
want to
it'll.
expand it maybe to include other eras, or are you just going to keep it like it's mostly
Well,
focused on the 60s?
I thought of that. It is still the '60s, and
Yeah.
I was hoping that somebody else might start one of the '70s, and then we could sort of
Yeah.
join up or something like that. But
Yeah, you have to put the word out there on your site and say we're looking to
yeah,
expand.
I thought, well, maybe I should expand to the '60s and '70s. I mean, the '60s, '70s, '80s, and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But because there is so many bands, of course.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
But it would be just too much work. I'd rather do a good job on just focus on that one part, because to me that was the '60s. To me was like the big bang,
Yeah.
like the '50s sort of lit the fuse with all the rock and roll scene and all
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But when the '60s hit, there was so much innovations
Mhm.
come out, and the effects of that big bang effect from the '60s, all that creativity with
Yeah.
the all the different kinds of music that suddenly started coming out, and it still continues today. Like I even hear songs on the radio today
Yeah.
that remind me of stuff.
Yeah, they do songs. Have your favorite. Who are your favorites from off your website? Do you have any favorite musicians, favorite
Well, I
songs?
must say, I think The Move was the first one that got me
Hmm. Yeah.
pulled in, because I just think there was such a lot of talent in that band, like
Hmm.
incredibly talented people. And when they formed, they were actually uh, taking all the best musicians
Yeah.
from the Birmingham bands
Hmm.
and trying to make this almost like a super group so that they could go to London, because you had to go to London in those days,
Yeah.
because there was nothing. There was a lot of there was a local scene, of course, but to
Hmm.
be really successful, you had to go to
Yeah,
London.
I've heard a lot of musicians that I've spoken to say that we had to go to London, so and it
So
wasn't
that
the easiest thing,
yeah,
but I think that's where the record companies were, and
all the big
the sort of
record companies.
A&R people were out in the clubs looking for
Yeah,
bands. Yeah.
and you had to make it down there, like the Move ended up playing on the Marquee and all these places, and if you didn't make it in London, then you could just forget it. Really, like you had
Yeah.
to sort of make it there, and then people would take notice
Yeah.
of you, and it was sad in some ways, because some people couldn't physically get there, I guess, or
Yeah.
else they never really got the exposure that they would have got,
Mhm. Mhm.
and like even in the case of Black Sabbath, for instance, it was Tony Hall or somebody like that came to
Yeah.
Birmingham on the advice of Jim Simpson, who was
Mhm.
managing them, and said, I've got this band, I want you to see them. And I don't think he was
Yeah.
too impressed with their demo tape. But then when he came to see them play, he said, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
But it was rare, like for I guess Tony Secunda. He was one of those London hustler guys. He was the one who discovered the Moody Blues,
Right.
actually, and
Yeah.
he actually did discover them in Birmingham, I think. But then he brought them down to London
Right.
because
Yeah.
he saw their potential, and he did the same thing with the Move as well,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they got quite badly ripped off, I think. I don't think they made a lot of money, but they did get their foot in the door of fame, so to
Yeah,
speak.
I think a lot of people had problems. There was a great interview I saw with Harold Pendleton, who
Yeah.
was the owner of the Marquee, and
Okay.
he would say that there were lots of shenanigans going on, and he always tried to pay people, and he seemed like he was always trying to be protecting people that were playing for him. So
Oh, I can
he's
imagine.
he's
Yeah.
quite interesting to hear talking about some of the things that were going on at the time.
Hmm.
And if you were young, I mean, most of these people were young then, so in their 20s, and
Of course.
it's really easy to fall into the hands of people that are just going to rip you off,
Yeah. All they wanted to do was play. That was that. They
Yeah,
wanted to play
yeah.
and hopefully make some money. You could make good money. I should say this. You could make good money back in those days. In the 60s in Birmingham, West Midlands, there were a lot of places for bands to play. So they could actually play at all these places, and then they could actually learn their like stagecraft, I guess you would call it, and
Yeah, yeah.
how to perform. And it's sad these days, really, because there really aren't as many places where you can do that anymore.
No, venues.
Back in the 60s, you'd be playing almost every night, a lot of these bands. And sometimes, which I find really amazing, there was something called the Reagan Circuit, which was
Right.
operated by this Irish lady called Ma Reagan. Mary Reagan, I guess, was her name,
Yeah.
and her husband. They both used to manage this, and they owned places like in King's Heath and Handsworth and the Reagan Circuit, it was called. I think they had these 4 venues,
Right.
and I guess they paid well, but the bands they had on there, they were expected to play 2 or even 3 places in the same night,
Wow.
apparently. So they would go to one gig, they would play for an hour maybe, then they would have to drive to another gig, play there for an hour, and then they would have to finish up at another venue and play there for another.
That's so exhausting.
Can you imagine being the drummer?
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine.
It'd be bad enough being a guitar player or a bass player, lugging all the amplifiers, but
Yeah,
to
exactly.
and but to play 3 places in one night, it was normal back
Yeah.
vinyl. You might have heard of Danny King. He was one of the first singers in Birmingham
Yep.
who got really big in Birmingham, and he was one of those people he refused to go to London to make it big because he thought they should come to him or whatever. But he had a huge collection of singles like vinyl and albums and all this kind of stuff, which he had imported
Wow.
from America.
Right.
And
Wow.
so anyone who got to know Danny King would say, have you heard any good songs? And they would go, and he had the biggest record collection in Birmingham at the time.
Wow, that's amazing.
That kind of music. So
So hopefully it's still around somewhere, his big
Oh, it's-
vinyl collection.
I think some of it is. Some of it might have been sold, but
Yeah.
but Danny, I think he might have even been the guy who found songs for the Moody Blues to record, like Go Now and all that kind of stuff, which became.
Yeah, I guess you had to have a good plug-in with the records, or because that's where you heard things.
Yeah, that's true. And but the live scene at that time in the 60s, you did sort of have to play the top 20, what they called it, and I guess you had to play stuff that everyone liked because everyone wanted to dance back then. And I've heard of people being described as human jukeboxes. They had to. The bands who were able to reproduce the closest to what the record was, they would be able to get the most work,
Yeah,
Like,
and then I guess slip in a song of your own, just to see if people liked it. Because if you keep playing other people's stuff, you never get famous for your own stuff.
that's right. And I think Denny Lane of the Moody Blues was one of the first people to start doing that. He started writing his own stuff, and once in a while he would slip in a song that he had written,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, that's very good. It's cool.
and I guess a lot of the times people liked it, and other times people didn't like it, and it's funny because as far as Led Zeppelin goes, I heard once Led Zeppelin got big, and Denny Lane went over to John Bonham's house, and they got drunk, and John Bonham started singing these songs that Denny Lane and the Diplomats used to play on stage in the early 60s. even stuff that Denny Lane had written, which he'd forgotten about.
Right.
Uh, and John Bonham
Okay.
said, "I used to be a fan of yours. I used to listen to all your stuff," and he actually knew these songs that
Wow. That's
Denny Lane.
complimentary.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that's when you hear stuff like that, like all these people who got big in the 70s and even the 80s, they were taking notice of a lot of this stuff that was going on at the time,
Yeah.
which people didn't consider a big deal. But now of course, people want to know more about it, so.
Yeah, it's really great to be able to talk to people like you who, took the time to put the website together and, get the stories up there and get the fans out. It's really cool. It's really good.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate it. And it's great to hear from people as well, like yourself, or people who email me and say, "Oh, this is great. Keep up the good work," and
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
kind of thing. And that's what keeps me going. As long as there's people who want to read about that stuff, then I'll just keep doing it.
Well,
You know,
good. That's what we want to hear.
and
Because I'm sure there'll always be people that want to hear, or definitely who are going to want to read the stories, because there's always going to be fans of that music. When we're long gone, there's always going to be people who turn and, find 60s music and older bands, and they're going to want to know about them. So your site will be really important. It always will be.
that's like even like what you said about collecting vinyl and stuff
Yeah.
like that. People that collect these. Like garage band or psychedelic singles from the 60s and stuff like that, and they write about them, and it's a lot of it's unknown bands, like some of them from
Yeah.
Birmingham in the 60s and stuff like that, and when you hear about some of these people or who talk to them, they think, well, I never realized people would even be interested in any of that stuff, because
People are.
it happened a long time ago, and yet it's good when you make them realize that there's people out there who are fans of theirs and they don't even realize it.
Yeah, it's amazing. So hopefully this will just keep getting bigger and bigger, and your website will get bigger and bigger. So yeah, it's been really great to talk to you about it. I really appreciate you taking time for me. So the website again, it's brumbeat.net.
Yeah, it's brumbeat.net,
Yep.
and if you type in brumbeat.com, it's the same thing. So yeah, anyone can have a look, and if they want to send me any information or stories they have,
Yep.
I'll appreciate having a look, and of course I always say this, if there's something on there that's not right, then let me know, because I can change it, because I'm dependent on people telling me.
Yeah, well, you would be, because if you're not there everywhere
Yeah,
where these stories happened,
that's
you
right.
can't know, can you?
And there's always more than one version of the same story, so you have to
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
be
That
wary of
problem.
that as well. So
Okay,
I
well,
just
it's been so great to talk to you. So I really appreciate your time, and I hope your website just goes from strength to strength.
thank you, Annie, and let me know about the music museum.
I
Music
definitely will.
music. Thanks. I would appreciate seeing it.
Yeah, I never look. I work with musicians. I know exactly what you have to do.
Okay. Thanks.